Hi, Elwin Robinson, founder of Lionheart Herbs, Complete Detox Academy and High Energy Academy, and here today to share with you my favourite recipe at the moment, which is a Taoist tonic herb superfood raw cookies, which I realise is quite a mouthful. The reason I really designed this one is because I was looking for a very long time for something which is delicious, filling, but more than that, the correct balance of macronutrients, right? Because raw desserts, as we know, are a lot healthier than kind of normal desserts, but the challenge with them is usually they're just full of fat, right? They're just really high in fat. Also, challenge with them is that quite often they're high in high glycemic sugar, you know, like maybe fruits, like dates, something like that. So this recipe has got low glycemic impact carbohydrate, but it's also a balance with a fairly decent amount of protein, a fairly decent amount of carbohydrate, and not too much fat. So it's a great balance, and so it's an absolute favorite in the household here. It's also got a great selection of tonic herbs in it, and a great selection of superfoods without being in any way yuck, which, as we know, is the most common danger when we start adding loads of healthy things to sweet treats, is that it quickly gets to a point of inedibility. So we wanted to avoid that as well. So got all the ingredients here. I'm just going to talk through them briefly, one by one, as we add them and basically make the mix. So the very first ingredients, and kind of the basis of this one, is oats, which I have soaking here. I'm not quite sure if you can see that. You'll see them in a minute once I rinse them. So basically, what we use here is oat groats. So these are little like grains of oats, as opposed to being flat, rolled oats, right? Rolled oats tend to be rancid, tend to be yuck, and they also tend to have very little of phytase, which is one of the enzymes that helps you actually digest them. So what we do with oat groats though is just as they are, which is the whole oats, just as they are, they're not really edible. So they have to be soaked for a while, at least 48 hours. I think these have been soaked for ages. I think maybe even 6 days, something like that, which is, you know, on the long end of time, but it's all good. It's basically just a little bit fermented. So what I'm going to do now is rinse, probably going to edit that out and then come back and I'll show you what it looks like. And so what I've got here is around 2 cups of very soaked, slightly fermented oat groats. And they're going to be the first thing to go in my food processor. So it's got the S type of blade. I'm using a Magimix here. This is probably in the high end of like food processors that will be able to cope with a lot of material. If you're doing this in perhaps a cheaper, smaller food processor, then that's okay, it'll still work, but I would just use less, so maybe use half of what I'm using here. So I'm using 1 pint, right, a pint glass, which is 2 cups. And that's obviously the soaked 2 cups, not 2 cups before. Next, what we're going to add is some almonds. Now, Blue Peter style, here's one I made earlier. These are almonds that I've already soaked, rinsed repeatedly, and then dehydrated, so that now they are ready to be used. I wouldn't just use normal almonds because I find them really hard to digest if they're not processed personally. I also find them a lot more delicious when they're soaked, rinsed and dehydrated. So that's the way that we use them here. And I'd say that's just over a cup, something like 2/3 of a pint. And so with the oats, just to explain, oats are high in beta-glucans, which are an immune system supporter. They've got a reasonable amount of protein, but they're mainly complex carb, right? So that's where we're getting a lot of the carbs from. With the almonds, on the other hand, we've got a decent amount of protein, but they're still mainly fat. So about 80% of calories coming from fat, about 20% from protein. Then we're going to put cashews in as well. The original recipe I found with this, which I've adapted significantly, didn't have cashews in, but I found cashews just make it nicer. So that's our little treat. And they're mainly fat, so they're 85% fat, 5% carbs, 10% protein, something like that. Then what I'm going to add as well is a little bit of coconut sugar. In fact, I'm probably going to need to use the rest of that. What I'm going to use for that is about 4 tablespoons. So coconut sugar, 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, that's just about all of it. Now I might adjust that at the end and just use the rest. I'm going to see what it's like. I always recommend that you taste it before you cook it, or in this case, dehydrate it, not cook it. Now these are mulberries, we're going to use those right at the end. So next I'm going to put in our tonic herbs. So the first thing I'm going to add is white atraculodes. This is kind of part of the ginger family, and this is a really great digestive tonic, right? A really powerful digestive tonic, also quite warming, quite yang. So it's just great for encouraging our digestive fire, because one of the challenges we have with all foods, right, especially if we eat them to excess or too often, as most of us do, is we put out our digestive fire, then we start to get damp, mucus forming in us, whole host of problems, right? So white atraculodes is one of the top herbs for dealing with that. And the other benefit, and this is true for all the herbs we're going to add here today, is they all taste nice, right? You may say, why have you not put this herb in? This herb is awesome, and the reason is because it don't taste good, right? So I still have it in tea or something like that, but it's not going in my dessert, right? This can go in the dessert, it tastes awesome. So I use a nice big heaped tablespoon of that one. Next I'm going to use astragalus. Astragalus for very similar reasons as white atraculodes. Very great digestive tonic, warming. The only other thing I'll say about astragalus as well is a great immune tonic, so we'll put it in for that reason. By the way, I'm just filming this kind of around the time, almost at the beginning of autumn. So this is a really great kind of dessert to be having at this time, because it's going to be supporting the immune system as well. Although obviously supporting the immune system is good at any time, especially if you're interested in living a long, healthy life. Next I'm going for maitake mushroom. I'm going to put a few mushrooms in here. Again, this one, to be honest, the main reason I'm putting this in and I'm not putting reishi in is because this one tastes good. Okay, so I'm going to use a whole tablespoon of that one as well. Now I realise I'm using quite a lot of these herbs, so this is more than a daily amount, but as you're going to see, this is going to make quite a large batch of cookies, right? This is the kind of amount that even if you eat a lot of cookies, you're still not going to be able to eat all these on your own yourself one day. So the idea is that there's enough herbs in here for multiple days and multiple people, not like you're going to eat it all in one go. I'm going to put a tablespoon, my wife is filming, is laughing, we're not going to eat it all in one go. I'm going to put a tablespoon of cordyceps in there as well. Cordyceps is, again, a great immune tonic medicinal mushroom. It's also really good for nourishing your Jing energy, your reserve energy, your adaptive energy. It's a powerful adaptogen. Next I'm putting in Codonopsis, and Codonopsis is really the same category as white atraculodes. This is a warming digestive tonic, right? So again, we're really emphasizing the digestive herbs in here. First of all, because they taste nice, but also second of all, because it's going to make the cookies easier to digest, right? How helpful is that? I'm going to put a bit less of this one because it has a little bit of a bitter kind of tang to it. So I'm going to put about half a tablespoon in there, maybe like a heaped teaspoon. Next we're going to use chaga. I'm actually going to put quite a decent amount of chaga in there. Chaga is probably the top medicinal mushroom of all in the world. Most forms of chaga powder, by the way, are just pure, the whole mushroom powdered. We're one of the few companies in the world that do extract powder. So that's 10-to-1 chaga extract. So that's really, really powerful antioxidant and some immune boosting power with those polysaccharides. And that's so awesome and so tasty and appropriate for desserts. I'm actually going to put 2 tablespoons of that one in. And then next, in fact, lastly, when it comes to tonic herbs, I'm going to put in some goji. And we didn't bother putting a label on this one, but this is indeed goji berry. And I actually prefer to use the extract powder rather than the whole fruits these days a lot of the time, especially as my wife doesn't really like the taste of the whole fruits. But yeah, so we like to put the extract powder in. I'll put a decent amount of that in. I'm going to put 2 tablespoons in. Now, we talked about the cordyceps being like a yang jing, right? So like the fiery kidney energy. Goji berries are a really premium yin jing tea. So these are more for healing, recuperation, recovery, that kind of thing. So great balance. And I'll put like a couple of tablespoons of that in again. And that will enhance the flavor as well as the nutrition of the whole thing. Next, I'm going to go for some mesquite, which because of insane European rules may or may not be available to you. Mesquite powder is also known as algaroba. So if you can't get mesquite and you see something called algaroba, that's the same thing, and that's also cool. But if you don't have mesquite, you can just leave this out, or you can replace it with carob powder. That works as well. I prefer the taste of mesquite. Some people prefer the taste of carob. By the way, talking about carob, found this in our farmer's market. Wild carob pods, €1 a kilo. Awesome. We've been munching on those because we haven't had any biscuits, so we munched on those instead. And they were delicious, but we're going to go back to the biscuits now. Definitely preferable. So I'm going to put like 4 tablespoons of mesquite in there. So mesquite is less a herb, more a superfood, and just a great selection of minerals, some very high quality protein, and a large amount of high quality, low glycemic carbohydrate. Okay, better, in fact, better than the coconut sugar, to be honest. The coconut sugar is really to sweeten it and make it nice, but again, very high quality complex carbohydrates there. And then last of all, and this is really interesting to me, protein powder, right? Sun Warrior protein. You could use the vanilla or the chocolate flavour, but I like to go for the natural and allow my flavouring to come from everything else that you've seen here. So we're going to put in natural protein powder, and this is how we're going to really boost the protein, right? So you've seen we've got fat from the almonds and the cashews, right? We've got carbs from the oats, the mesquite, and the coconut sugar, right? A bit of carbs as well from all the polysaccharides and all the various herbs we've added there. But we're going to get a decent amount of protein by adding the protein powder. So I'm going to put in probably about 4 heaped tablespoons of that. And when I say heaped, you know, I am talking a mountain here. Probably about the same as a scoop, if you use the scoop that comes with a bag. And I'm also going to add 1 culinary herb, which is I'm going to put in probably about this much, probably about a teaspoonful of cinnamon. And the benefit of cinnamon really is for blood sugar balance and mainly for deliciousness. So we're putting it in for those 2 reasons mainly. And then we have assembled all our ingredients except for, what's the one thing we need in our desserts? Can you guess? Salt, right? Got a nice little salt cellar here. And so, you know, a good quality salt is an essential part of dessert, but a very small amount. Now, because what we got here, we've got, you know, if I were making, say, a mousse, I would use a lot less than this, possibly just a tiny pinch. But because we got here is cookies, we're going to use a decent amount. So we're going to use something like 1/4 of a teaspoon, something like that. Obviously, you only want to use good quality salt. Over here in Portugal, where we're filming this, we've got Portuguese Atlantic sea salt, unnaturally heated, so just dried by the sun. Unprocessed, just awesome stuff, so we love that. We're going to put that in. Of course, if you don't happen to live in Portugal, Celtic sea salt, awesome. Himalayan salt, Hawaiian salt, any real good quality salt. And that's it, and then we're going to blend it up. And it's almost certainly going to need a bit of water adding, but I prefer to blend it and then judge based on that how much water to add. So, gonna turn it on, and then we'll probably pause and you'll see once it's done. Okay, so at this point it's starting to make a funny noise, so that to me indicates it needs a little bit of looking at. So yeah, that's far too dry. What we want to come up with is something like a cookie dough kind of consistency. If you've ever made or bought cookie dough, you'll know what I mean. And you'll see what consistency we're looking for. So at the moment this is just kind of like a dry powder. So I've just put some water in there, we'll blend it again, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so now this is looking much more like it. Yeah, that's the stuff. So you can see the kind of consistency that we're looking for. You see that? Kind of plopping consistency, probably call that. So we've got the right consistency, it's blended pretty well. So the last thing we want to do with our spoon is just check the taste. And what we're really aiming for here is nice, sweet, and not too sweet. So this is really a trick that I think we first learned from chocolate. If you have cacao powder in its own, now if you're a real chocolate aficionado, you might like, you know, chocolate on its own, but most people, they want a bit of sweet with it, right? Well, I found it's exactly the same for, and I really see chocolate as a herb, right? Medicinal herb rather than a food. So it's the same with these kind of herbs. Just these herbs on their own, Not necessarily going to be tasty, they're obviously still worth having, but with the right level of sweetness, they can be really delicious as dessert. So let's just try that. So that's almost there. Got a really caramelly flavour. For some reason, it reminds me of like roasted peanut butter, even though you saw there's no peanuts in there, right? But it's that kind of sweet peanut butter kind of taste. I reckon though that my intuition was spot on, and I'm just going to add that last little bit of coconut sugar to it. And I reckon then it's going to be perfect. So let's just add the last bit. Okay, so I reckon that's done now. So again, same kind of consistency that we were talking about before. Now, you may think it's ready, and it could be. You could just take this and not do what I'm going to do next and skip ahead and put it straight into the dehydrator for dehydrating. You can actually just eat it like that as well, but that's not what I'm going to advise with this. However, I'm going to recommend one more step which is going to make it extra delicious. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, just to tonify or add a little bit of extra to this, is to take it out, put it in a nice mixing bowl. Okay, so I've got this in the bowl now, and what I'm going to do is add to it some black mulberries, which I'm not quite sure why they're black, but they remind me a lot of raisins. I'm not too keen on raisins because they're very sugary, but these black mulberries seem to be a lot less sugary, a lot more dense in nutrition, while still adding a kind of raisiny taste. So I'm going to add a little bit of those, not a lot, probably about a handful, maybe about a cup, something like that, maybe about half a cup. That's kind of good. And then apple. And apple is really what brings this to the next level to me. And so I guess apple and raisin is quite a traditional thing to put in an oat cookie, so maybe that's part of why I like to do it. And to me it just gives a really interesting texture, sensation difference which you wouldn't get if you were just having the cookie mix on its own. So for this much cookie mix, I'm just going to use 4 apples, organic of course. I'm just going to peel them first. And so as you can hopefully see there, I've just kind of added some chopped up onions in kind of little pieces. And now I'm just going to give that a good mix together, and then I'll show you how to make cookies out of them. So next I'll show you how I'd actually prepare those cookies. So what I've got is I've got my mixture, right? I've got a couple of dehydrator trays with the Teflex sheets on them. And then I've got an ice cream scoop, medium size, if you do have a choice of sizes like we seem to, and in a glass of water. And so we'll change the camera angle, I'll show you what I do. Okay, so basically what I do is get my ice cream scoop, scoop it in with my cookie mixture, and then put it at the edge of the dehydrator tray, and then click it, and it will just come right out like that. Then I'll just get my fingers in the water, put a little bit of a squish on there, and then that's it. Cookie number 1 done. To me, when I saw this, I just thought, that is awesome. That is the best way to get like a simple cookie without messing about with cutters or anything like that, which generally doesn't work so well with these raw mixtures. This is just like a super quick and super easy way of doing it. So in fact, what I normally do is just scoop like a whole tray full, doing them in little rows, and then press them all down. And you can see there, that is what a tray looks like when I'm done. Then all I need to do is add these to my dehydrator. By the way, if you have this option, I really like what we have the option of doing here. We've got a little cupboard, and this substantially reduces the amount of noise that we have to listen to while this thing's running in the kitchen. So I really like it for that. So all we do is get our cookies and put them in the dehydrator, put the lid on, and then turn it on. Now, the one other thing that I'm going to do, which I probably won't film because it just takes a second, is about 2 hours into the process, I'm just going to take the cookies and remove the Teflex sheet so that they cook well on both sides. But I do start with a Teflex sheet, and I recommend that you do, because when I've tried putting them just on the mesh trays, the cookie mix just sticks to the mesh and it's kind of tedious to have to scrub it off every time. So a Teflex sheet is definitely a good idea to start with. Okay, so it's been about 7 hours. I like to leave about 6 to 8 hours to get the kind of consistency that I'm going to show you here. So let's see if they're ready. Nice. Okay, yeah, this looks just about right. As you can see, they're kind of upside down, which is because I went in and, as I said previously, flipped them to get them off the Teflex sheet. So this is kind of what they look like, and I'll just remove one to show you. A funny shape one, this one. So basically, this is the kind of consistency we got. So they're kind of hard, right? If you can hear that. But I just tap them like that. But when I open it up, it's kind of moist, kind of gooey, and as you can see, they're probably kind of squishy. Okay, I can squish it as well. That is really the ideal consistency that we want. And absolutely delicious. It's got that kind of malty, caramelly kind of consistency, I think, thanks to the mesquite, as well as tasting a lot like a normal cookie, because it's got the oats in, so it doesn't feel like too like not a cookie, like the raw cookies that are made with just nuts. And of course, just incredibly healthy, incredibly beneficial, a really great way to get those tonic herbs into you. So I'm going to attempt not to eat too many of these, which isn't too difficult because they're really quite filling. And I'll see you for another video soon.